If you are listening these words, you probably got interested in the subject of spiritual development. Perhaps you are even looking for information how to grow spiritually or simply out of curiosity. Do you want to know what is this spiritual development? Spiritual development can be defined as the process of human development from the spiritual side. But what is this spiritual side? And how can you improve yourself in it? Some people think that spiritual development is about performing certain practices, including religious practices. They mistakenly identify it with exercise or ritual devotion to specific activities such as meditation, prayer, breathing exercises, relaxation, mind exercises, etc. Spiritual development is also often confused with having psychic abilities, the so-called supernatural, which are actually technical abilities and can usually be developed without deepening spiritual development. In the meantime, spiritual development can be defined as the natural process of becoming a better person in moral and consciousness categories. Spiritual development cannot be bought. Many people practice various kinds of personal development systems, esoteric systems and religious systems. They believe that it develops in this way in a spiritual way. It may indeed be the truth, because almost every intentional action towards becoming a better person can be counted as a spiritual development. However, these systems themselves are not spiritual development. They can only stimulate it, but this is not always the case. Whether spiritual development will stimulate depends on how much a person deliberately conducts his own practice and can distinguish between the exercises of the mind or the ritual repetition of specific activities from the growth and development of one's consciousness. The same applies to participation in various types of courses, training, reading books, etc. You can do it for your own spiritual development, and then this development is actually more conscious in you. We are more aware of the changes taking place in us, our self-awareness is rising, so spiritual development takes place in a conscious way. However, it is impossible to buy spiritual growth or to artificially force it, program it, etc. You cannot go to a workshops of spiritual development, pay and go out as a spiritual person because you got some paper, etc. You cannot read even the wisest book and remembering its content, consider yourself as a spiritually advanced. Likewise, mastering the various mental techniques so popular in esoterics and parapsychology has nothing to do with spiritual development. Spiritual development is a process. True spiritual development is in fact continuous in us. Spiritual development is a learning process of the soul, one could say. Each of our experience in life and activity, no matter how trivial they may seem, and in fact they are, even when we do not fully realize it, an element of our spiritual development. Life is a process of learning on one's own experience, and spiritual development is closely connected with it. Spiritual development is also the ability to view different issues from a perspective. It manifests itself in the fact that man understands more, is more aware and self-aware, and thus chooses higher values and a higher quality of inner life through constructive, wise interpretation of reality. Spiritual development in esoterics and New Age. Spiritual development in New Age and esotericism is often associated with crazy hippies, imitation of Oriental religions and their customs, or dealing with various types of secret arts. This is the envelope that we see outside, which may indicate the interest of the individual seeking the truth and spiritual development, and it can be nothing but a colorful facade and thoughtless copying of what is not understood from those who they seem mysterious and showy to someone. Spiritual development is not about exchanging one religion for another. Where is spiritual development in all this? Well, spiritual development is an invisible element. Spiritual growth cannot be pointed with your finger and say, "Oh, look." It cannot be weighed or measured objectively. It cannot be praised because at the moment when it would constitute an element of boast, it would show its illusory character. It is like with soul, God and other metaphysical higher values. If we want to indicate it, We can only honestly indicate the direction and not the object itself, because at the moment of bringing these values to a measurable, precise form, their supernatural value passes away somewhere. Spiritual growth is at your fingertips. True spiritual growth is at your fingertips. Even closer. It is always in you. All the time goes on, and the fact that you read these words testifies to your search, and the search itself means development, because it's a movement, it's of action, it's an initiative, and it's a process of discovering, acquiring new consciousness, etc. Remember that all the tools offered to you can really be useful. Books, courses, workshops, and a whole lot of other, very pleasant and often valuable things. However, do not worry about your spiritual development. You do not have to chase after it anymore. You do not really have to achieve anything in this area beyond the consciousness itself. You are already a spiritual being who is growing because you experiencing existence. The desire of more conscious, deeper understanding is indeed noble. It only testifies to a more conscious form of this process called spiritual development. Open mind is spiritual development. Finally, important information. There is no spiritual development without an open mind. Probably one of the few, if not the only easily recognizable determinant and component that leads to spiritual development. Openness of the mind, or the ability to take a different point of view than currently possessed, accepting for the purpose of objective analysis of some issue, observing from different perspectives, also taking and respecting the emotional aspects, the ability to change your own point of view and beliefs in the face of new information, etc. Those who stick to dogmas stops in their spiritual development. As I said earlier, spiritual development is not about converting one religion to another, one set of beliefs for another, and further ritual, repeating, mindless behaviors, assertions, and other personality elements as part of imitation. Spiritual development consists in absorbing and exploring the world and yourself, without rejecting inconvenient information, without even evaluating it to be convenient and uncomfortable. We get to know and accept the world in this way, and every change in it, image, in information that we have about it, we adopt and accept without fear that it will violate our created image and our own belief about ourselves or the world. At the same time, we never assume in our spiritual development that we have reached the top of knowledge and now we know everything as it is. Spiritual development is also humbleness to the enormity and uniqueness of the world, and the ability to constantly appreciate and immerse yourself in this uniqueness. If you like this material, please click like button and subscribe to my channel for more inspiring materials in the future. And remember to be awesome.